I'm Edwin, 34, a software developer from Boston, who just wanted to celebrate my birthday at this nice restaurant with a pool deck. Everything was going fine until my brother's 8-year-old son grabbed my designer bag and threw it into the pool, yelling, "Dad says you don't deserve nice things." My sister-in-law, Rebecca, laughed so hard, she actually cried, while my brother Thomas barely tried to hide his smirk. I just smiled, walked out, and made a decision about that car loan I've been paying for him. If you're watching this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and hit subscribe if you want to see how I handled this situation. Growing up with Thomas was always a competition, but one where the rules were rigged against me. From the time we were kids, he was the golden child who could do no wrong. 3 years older than me, Thomas got the praise, the attention, and the excuses, while I learned early on that I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Our parents divorced when I was 10, and Thomas was 13. Dad moved across the country and started a new family, while Mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. During those years, I learned to be self-sufficient. I got decent grades, held part-time jobs since I was 16, and saved up for college. Thomas, meanwhile, dropped out of college twice, bounced between jobs, and always had some excuse about why nothing was ever his fault. When Mom passed away from cancer 6 years ago, I was 28 and just starting to establish myself in the tech industry. Thomas was 31, married to Rebecca, with a 2-year-old son, Tyler, and working at a car dealership. Mom left us equal shares of her modest estate, which wasn't much after medical bills. I used my portion to pay off some student loans. Thomas bought a boat he couldn't afford and had to sell 6 months later at a massive loss. That pattern continued as I worked my way up in the software development world. I lived below my means, saved aggressively, and eventually landed a senior developer position at a financial tech company in Boston. I bought a small but nice condo in a good neighborhood, drove a reliable car that was paid off, and finally felt like I was building some financial security. Meanwhile, Thomas constantly lived beyond his means, racking up credit card debt and making questionable financial decisions. 2 years ago, Thomas called me with an emergency. He needed a cosigner for a luxury car loan because his credit was shot from missed payments on previous loans. Rebecca was pregnant with their second child, and he insisted they needed a bigger, safer vehicle. After hours of guilt-tripping about family obligations and how I had money to spare while he was struggling with a growing family, I reluctantly agreed to co-sign. I made him promise to make every payment on time. He swore up and down that he had a promotion coming and would never let me down. Fast forward to last month, and I received a major promotion at work. After years of grinding away at code and managing increasingly complex projects, I was now a lead developer with a substantial salary increase. To celebrate this milestone and my upcoming birthday, I decided to treat myself to something special, a designer bag I'd had my eye on for months. It was expensive, sure, but it was also a graduation present to myself for reaching this career milestone. Inside that bag, I carried my wallet, keys, new smartphone, wireless earbuds, and a laminated photo of Mom that I'd kept with me since her funeral. I decided to book a reservation at Lakeside, one of the nicest restaurants in the city. It had a beautiful outdoor dining area overlooking a decorative pool with fountains. Despite my better judgment, I invited my family, Thomas, Rebecca, and their kids. Part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, Thomas could be genuinely happy for me for once. The evening of my birthday arrived, and I was the first one there dressed in my best suit. I placed my new bag carefully on the chair next to me, feeling a little proud, but also a bit self-conscious about the splurge. My Aunt Martha arrived next, giving me a warm hug and a card. She had raised us after Mom died, stepping in when we needed family the most, and I valued her presence in my life. A couple of my close friends from work showed up too, adding to the celebratory atmosphere. Thomas, Rebecca, and 8-year-old Tyler arrived 30 minutes late. Their toddler daughter was with a babysitter, which was probably for the best, given what would transpire. Thomas immediately ordered the most expensive scotch on the menu, while making a show of checking the price of everything else. "Well, well, look at Mr. Big Shot Developer," Thomas said, gesturing at my outfit and the upscale venue. "Must be nice to waste money on fancy restaurants, while the rest of us are just trying to get by." I ignored the jab and tried to keep things pleasant. "I'm just happy to have everyone here to celebrate. It's been a good year, and I wanted to share it with family. Rebecca eyed my bag and nudged Thomas. Is that the designer bag you were talking about? The one you said only pretentious people buy? I felt my face flush, but maintained my composure. It was a gift to myself for the promotion. We should order some appetizers. The calamari here is supposed to be amazing. Throughout the first part of the meal, Thomas made several more comments about my fancy job and how some people have all the luck. Each time I redirected the conversation, determined not to let him ruin my birthday dinner. Tyler, meanwhile, was getting increasingly restless, running around the restaurant and disturbing other diners. As our entrees arrived, Tyler's behavior was becoming more disruptive. He ran between tables, nearly causing a server to drop a tray of drinks. Rather than discipline him, Thomas and Rebecca seemed amused by their son's spirited behavior. Tyler, buddy, maybe sit down and eat your chicken fingers, I suggested gently after he bumped into my chair for the third time. Rebecca shot me a look. He's just being a kid, Edwin. Not everyone wants to sit still and be boring all the time. I'm not saying he should be boring, I replied. But there are other people trying to enjoy their meals here. Thomas scoffed. Since when did you become such an expert on parenting? No kids of your own, but plenty of opinions, huh? I took a deep breath and tried to change the subject. Aunt Martha, how's your garden doing this year? While Martha was telling us about her prize-winning tomatoes, I noticed Tyler eyeing my bag with unusual interest. Something about his expression made me uneasy. I casually moved the bag to the other side of my chair, closer to the wall and further from Tyler's reach. For a few minutes, things calmed down. We ate our meals, and the conversation drifted to safer topics. I started to think maybe we'd make it through dinner without a major incident after all. I was wrong. While I was engaged in conversation with my friends from work, Tyler managed to sneak around behind me. The first indication something was wrong was Aunt Martha's gasp. I turned just in time to see Tyler grabbing my bag off the chair. Tyler. No. I stood up quickly, but he was already darting away, weaving between tables toward the pool area. Tyler. Bring that back right now. I called, following him but trying not to cause a scene by running through the restaurant. The boy reached the edge of the decorative pool, turned around to make sure I was watching, and held the bag over the water. The entire restaurant seemed to go quiet. I froze about 15 feet away, not wanting to startle him into dropping it. Tyler. I said calmly, that's not a toy. Please give it back to me. Instead of responding to me, Tyler looked over at his parents, who had followed but were hanging back. Then, with a malicious grin that seemed far too calculated for an 8-year-old, he shouted words that still ring in my ears. Dad says you don't deserve nice things. And with that, he threw my bag directly into the center of the pool, where the water was deepest. The splash was followed by gasps from nearby diners. I stood there in shock as my bag and everything in it sank to the bottom of the 4-foot decorative pool. But what happened next was even more painful than watching my possessions get destroyed. Rebecca burst into uncontrollable laughter. Not just a chuckle, but full-body tears streaming down her face, hysterics. She was literally doubled over, pointing at my expression, and then at the pool, unable to contain herself. Thomas made a half-hearted move to scold Tyler, grabbing his arm and saying, That wasn't nice, buddy. But I could see the smirk he was trying to hide. He was proud of what his son had done. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. Around me, other diners were watching with expressions ranging from shock to sympathy. A server was already calling for a manager. But all I could focus on was the betrayal from my own family laughing at my humiliation. I need to get that out, I said, quietly moving toward the pool. It's just a stupid bag, Edwin, Thomas called out. Stop being so materialistic. It's not like you can't afford another one. What Thomas didn't understand was that it wasn't just about the bag. My wallet with all my cards and ID was in there, my keys, my new smartphone, my wireless earbuds, and worst of all, that irreplaceable laminated photo of Mom that I'd carried everywhere for 6 years. A restaurant staff member was already using a net to fish out the bag, but the damage was done. Water streamed from the expensive leather as they handed it to me, apologizing profusely, though none of this was their fault. I stood there, dripping bag in hand, and looked at my brother and his wife. They had moved on from the incident already, Thomas ordering another drink while Rebecca wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. Tyler had returned to his seat and was eating his dessert as if nothing had happened. "I think I'm going to head out," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the emotion churning inside me. "What? Don't be so sensitive," Thomas replied. "It was just a joke. Tyler didn't mean anything by it." "Dad says you don't deserve nice things," I repeated Tyler's words. "That didn't come from nowhere, Thomas." Thomas had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. But Rebecca jumped in. "Oh, come on, everyone vents about family sometimes. Don't be so dramatic." I looked at Aunt Martha, who appeared deeply uncomfortable, and my friends who were clearly outraged on my behalf, but didn't know how to intervene in family drama. "Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm sorry dinner ended this way. I put some cash on the table to cover my portion of the bill, plus a generous tip for the server who had to deal with this mess." As I turned to leave, Thomas called after me. "It's just a bag, Edwin. Don't ruin your own birthday over something so stupid." But it wasn't just a bag. It was the culmination of years of resentment, disrespect, and jealousy. And as I walked to my car with water dripping from my ruined possessions, I knew something had fundamentally changed in me. This was the last time Thomas would take advantage of my goodwill. The drive home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white, alternating between disbelief, humiliation, and rage. The soaked bag sat on the passenger seat, water slowly pooling beneath it. "Dad says you don't deserve nice things." Those words kept replaying in my mind. Not just the cruel statement itself, but the implication that Thomas regularly spoke about me this way to his child. What else did he say about me when I wasn't around? What kind of resentment had been festering all these years, while I continued to help him financially and emotionally? I thought back to other incidents that suddenly made more sense. The time Thomas accidentally spilled red wine on my new suit at a family wedding. The backhanded compliments whenever I shared good news. The way family gatherings often ended with Thomas making some scene that diverted attention from anyone else's achievements. When I got home, I immediately went to the bathroom and carefully emptied the contents of my bag. My wallet was soaked through credit cards, and ID would need to be replaced. My smartphone screen flickered with water damage despite its supposed water resistance. The wireless earbuds were likely ruined. But what broke me was the laminated photo of Mom. The water had seeped under the lamination, causing the colors to run. Mom's smiling face, captured during her last good day, before the cancer took over, was now distorted and blurry. I'd taken that photo to every important event in my life since she passed away of keeping her with me. Now it was ruined, just like my birthday and my relationship with my brother. I laid everything out to dry, though I knew most of it was beyond saving. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and finally let the emotions wash over me. I didn't cry, I was past tears. Instead, I felt a cold clarity setting in. This wasn't just about one incident or one ruined bag. This was about a lifetime of being treated as less than, of making excuses for Thomas, of putting his needs before my own. Around midnight, my phone rang. It was Thomas. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought he might be calling to apologize. I should have known better. "Hey, so, that was pretty wild tonight, huh?" He sounded slightly drunk, his words running together. "That's one way to put it," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Look, I think you're overreacting a bit. It was just a bag and Tyler's just a kid. He doesn't know any better." He said, "Dad says you don't deserve nice things." Those were his exact words, Thomas. There was a pause, then Thomas laughed uncomfortably. "Kids say crazy stuff all the time. You can't take it seriously." "Did you say that about me? To him?" Another pause. "I mean, maybe something like that, but not in a serious way. Just blowing off steam, you know. It's not like you're hurting for money like the rest of us." "The rest of us, Thomas? You make good money at the dealership. You just spend more than you make." "Well, not all of us can be computer geniuses making six figures," he snapped. "Some of us have to struggle in the real world." I took a deep breath. I worked hard to get where I am. Nothing was handed to me. "Oh, please," Thomas scoffed. "You always were Mom's favorite. Always the smart one, the responsible one. Do you know how tired everyone is of hearing about perfect Edwin and his perfect life?" That caught me off guard. "What are you talking about?" "The family talks, bro. Everyone's sick of your humble brags about your promotions and your condo and your fancy stuff. At least I'm real. At least I admit when I'm messing up." I was stunned. Not just by his admission that he regularly badmouthed me to our extended family, but by the complete lack of self-awareness. In his mind, I was the villain of the story, the show-off who needed to be taken down a peg. "Thomas, I've been helping you for years. I co-signed your car loan. I gave you money when Rebecca lost her job. I've never once thrown that in your face." "Yeah, and you love having that power over me, don't you? St. Edwin always there to bail out his screw-up brother. Makes you feel pretty superior, I bet." I was speechless. There was no reasoning with him, no way to make him see how twisted his perspective was. Then came the kicker. Anyway, Thomas continued. "Tyler's pretty upset about missing out on ice cream because we had to leave the restaurant early. I think you owe him a replacement ice cream date. Maybe this weekend." That was it. That was the moment something permanently snapped inside me. My 8-year-old nephew deliberately destroyed my property, humiliated me on my birthday. His parents laughed about it, and now I was supposed to buy him ice cream as an apology. "I have to go, Thomas," I said quietly. "So is that a yes on the ice cream?" "Tyler's been talking about that new place with the—" "Goodbye, Thomas." I hung up. I sat in silence for a long time afterward, processing the conversation and everything it revealed. Thomas didn't just lack remorse. He genuinely believed I was in the wrong. There would never be an apology, never be a moment of real understanding between us. As I was getting ready for bed, my phone pinged with a notification. It was an automatic reminder that the payment for Thomas's car loan would be processed from my account in 3 days. I'd set up the auto payment 6 months ago, when Thomas claimed to be having temporary cash flow issues. He'd promised to pay me back, but not a single dollar had materialized. I stared at the notification for a long time. Then I opened my banking app and canceled the auto payment. It was time for Thomas to face reality. It was time for me to stop enabling him. As I lay in bed unable to sleep, I wondered what would happen next. The car loan had been the last financial tie between us, the last way Thomas could exploit my sense of family obligation. Without it, would we have any relationship at all? And more importantly, did I even want one? Morning arrived after a nearly sleepless night. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, but I knew I wouldn't be able to focus on code with the situation weighing on my mind. Instead, I spent the early hours researching exactly what it meant to be a cosigner on a car loan. What I discovered was troubling but not surprising. The loan was 60 months long, and we were 24 months in. Thomas had made payments consistently for the first 18 months, but over the past 6 months, it was my auto payments keeping the loan current. Meanwhile, Thomas's social media showed family trips to amusement parks, new gaming consoles for Tyler, and expensive dinners out. He had the money, he was just choosing not to honor his obligations. I called the bank and spoke to a loan officer, explaining my situation as a cosigner. She confirmed what I already suspected as a cosigner. I was fully responsible for the loan. If payments stopped, both our credit scores would take a hit. If the car was repossessed, it would show up on both our credit reports. "Is there any way to remove myself as a cosigner?" I asked. "The only way is if the primary borrower refinances the loan solely in their name," she explained, "or if the loan is paid in full." Neither of those options seemed likely given Thomas's financial habits and our current relationship status. "What happens if I stop making payments?" I asked. "Well, since you're not the primary borrower, the bank will first attempt to collect from your brother. If he doesn't pay, and the account becomes sufficiently delinquent, the vehicle may be repossessed. As a cosigner, this would impact your credit score, unfortunately. A hit to my credit score versus continuing to pay for a car that Thomas drove while he laughed at my misfortune. It wasn't really a choice anymore." "One more question," I said. "If the loan is delinquent, how quickly could repossession happen?" "It varies. But if there's a history of payment issues, or if the bank has reason to believe the borrower is high risk, it can happen quite quickly sometimes, within a few weeks of missed payments." After hanging up, I did some additional research online and discovered something interesting. Thomas had missed 2 payments before I started covering them 6 months ago. Those missed payments had triggered a special clause in the loan agreement. If any future payment was more than 15 days late, the bank could initiate repossession proceedings immediately. Thomas wasn't just taking advantage of my generosity. He was potentially one missed payment away from losing his car, and he'd never bothered to tell me. He'd let me believe I was helping him through a temporary rough patch, not saving him from his own irresponsibility. I spent the next hour drafting an email to Thomas. I wanted to be clear, direct, and unemotional. Thomas, I am writing to inform you that I have canceled the automatic payment for your car loan. For the past 6 months, I have been making these payments without any acknowledgement or repayment from you. After yesterday's events at my birthday dinner, I've realized that our relationship is not healthy. Tyler's words, "Dad says you don't deserve nice things," made it clear how you speak about me to your family. Rebecca's reaction and your subsequent phone call confirmed that you feel no remorse for the incident. The car loan was the last financial tie between us. Going forward, you will need to make your own payments or face the consequences with the bank. I have attached the loan information so you can set up your own payment method. I need time and space to reconsider our relationship. Please do not contact me for financial assistance in the future. Edwin. I read it over several times, resisting the urge to add emotional language or list all the ways Thomas had hurt me over the years. This wasn't about punishing him. It was about establishing boundaries I should have set long ago. Before sending the email, I took one more precaution. I set up a security camera at my front door and another one overlooking my parking space. I had a feeling Thomas wouldn't take this news well, and I wanted to be prepared. I sent the email, then made myself a cup of coffee, and waited. Surprisingly, there was no immediate response. No angry phone call, no defensive text message. The silence was almost more unnerving than an explosion would have been. As the day progressed, I kept checking my phone, but nothing came through. I used the time to contact my credit card companies about replacing my water-damaged cards and ordered a new phone. The silence from Thomas stretched on. That evening, I received an automated notification from the bank confirming that the auto payment had been canceled. The next payment was due in 3 days. If Thomas didn't make it, the 15-day grace period would begin. After that, based on his previous missed payments, repossession would be a real possibility. I slept better that night, the decision made, and the consequences now in Thomas's hands, where they belonged. The next morning I went to work as usual. No calls from Thomas, no emails, no texts. The silence continued all day. On the third day, the payment due date arrived. I checked the loan account online. I still had access as cosigner and saw no payment had been made. The clock on the 15-day grace period had started ticking. Still nothing from Thomas. It was as if he was calling my bluff, believing that eventually I'd cave and make the payment rather than risk damage to my own credit score. He didn't know that I'd already accepted that consequence as the price of freedom from his manipulation. 14 days passed. No payment, no contact. On the morning of the 15th day, I took another day off work. Something told me I should be home. At exactly 9:05 in the morning, my security camera alerted me to movement in front of Thomas's house across town. I'd set up the app to monitor his driveway as well, suspecting this day would come. A tow truck had pulled up, and 2 men were approaching the luxury SUV parked in Thomas's driveway. They worked quickly and professionally, hooking up the vehicle and winching it onto the flatbed. The entire process took less than 10 minutes. As the truck pulled away with Thomas's car secured on the back, I felt no satisfaction, no vindictive pleasure. Just a quiet certainty that I'd done what needed to be done. The car was gone from the driveway, and with it, the last tie binding me to Thomas's financial irresponsibility. Now I just had to wait for the fallout. The first call came at 9:17, just 12 minutes after the repo men drove away with Thomas's SUV. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call, and another. Text messages started flooding in each one, more desperate and angry than the last. Call me now. What the hell did you do? They took my car. Answer your damn phone. I waited until 10 o'clock, giving myself time to prepare mentally for the conversation. Then I called him back. What the hell? Edwin Thomas shouted before I could even say hello. They took my car. I have to be at work in an hour. How am I supposed to get there? The same way you'd get there if you had been making your own car payments for the last 6 months, I replied, keeping my voice calm and even. Bus. Uber. Ask a coworker for a ride. I can't believe you did this to me. To your own brother. I didn't do anything to you, Thomas. I simply stopped covering your responsibilities. The email I sent you 3 days ago explained everything. I thought you were bluffing. I never thought you'd actually let them repossess the car. Then you don't know me very well, I said. Which isn't surprising, since you apparently spend a lot of time telling your family I don't deserve nice things. There was a pause. Then Thomas's voice returned lower and more threatening. You think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you, Mr. Perfect? With his fancy job and his designer bags. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I just work hard and try to live within my means. Oh, spare me the financial advice, Thomas snapped. You did this to punish me because Tyler accidentally got your bag wet. Accidentally, I repeated. He deliberately threw it into a pool after repeating words you said about me, and then you and Rebecca laughed. There was nothing accidental about it. He's 8 years old. Kids do stupid things. Yes, they do. Especially when their parents teach them that it's okay to disrespect others. I heard Rebecca's voice in the background asking what was happening. Thomas must have filled her in, because suddenly she was on the phone too. You selfish jerk, she hissed. You know we need that car for the kids. For doctor's appointments and school. How could you do this to innocent children because your precious designer bag got wet? The car was repossessed because you and Thomas didn't make the payments, I replied. That's how loans work. If you don't pay, you lose the collateral. We're family, she screeched. Family helps each other. Family doesn't laugh when an 8-year-old destroys someone's property. Family doesn't make fun of each other's achievements. Family doesn't teach children that it's okay to be cruel. It was a joke. You have no sense of humor. I took a deep breath. I'm not going to argue about this. The decision is made. You'll need to work with the bank if you want to get the car back. We can't afford the payments. Thomas was back on the phone. You know that. You could afford amusement parks and new gaming consoles, I pointed out. You made choices with your money, Thomas. Now you're facing the consequences of those choices. I'm going to tell everyone in the family what you did, Thomas threatened. They'll all see what a vindictive, petty person you really are. Feel free. I have the security footage of Tyler throwing my bag in the pool and you and Rebecca laughing about it. I also have records showing I've been making your car payments for 6 months while you spent money on vacations and luxury items. Tell the family whatever you want. That gave him pause. You recorded us. The restaurant has security cameras, Thomas. I requested the footage after the incident for insurance purposes. It wasn't entirely true. I hadn't actually requested the footage yet, but I knew the restaurant would have it. And now I definitely would request it. This isn't over, Thomas said, his voice low and dangerous. You'll regret this. I'm sorry you feel that way, I replied. I need to go now. I have work to do. I ended the call and blocked both their numbers. I knew it was only a temporary solution. They knew where I lived after all, but I needed some peace to process what had just happened. That peace lasted about 2 hours. At 12:15, my security camera alerted me to movement at my front door. Thomas and Rebecca were standing on my porch. Thomas pounding on the door hard enough to rattle the hinges. I went to the door, but didn't open it. Through the intercom system I'd installed, after buying the condo, I said, "Please stop banging on my door." "Open up," Edwin Thomas shouted. "We need to talk face to face." I have nothing more to say that I haven't already said on the phone. "Open the door or I'll break it down," Thomas threatened. "That would be unwise," I replied calmly. This entire conversation is being recorded by my security system, and threatening to break into someone's home is a crime. I watched through the peephole as Thomas's face contorted with rage. Rebecca put a hand on his arm, probably realizing that threats weren't going to work. "Edwin, please," she said, her voice suddenly sweet and conciliatory. "We just want to talk. We can work this out. Like family." We already tried talking. It didn't go well. That was over the phone. It's always better to talk in person. Please just give us 5 minutes. I considered it. Maybe if I let them say their piece, they'd leave me alone afterward. But something about Rebecca's too sweet tone made me suspicious. I'm not comfortable letting you in right now. If you want to talk calmly, we can meet in a public place tomorrow. This can't wait until tomorrow. Thomas exploded again. We need the car back today. I need to get to work. The kids have appointments. Then, you should probably be on the phone with the bank, or looking for alternative transportation, instead of standing on my porch. Thomas kicked my door hard, causing me to jump back, even though I knew it wouldn't give way. You think you're so much better than me. You've always thought that. Well, you're not. You're just a lonely loser who has to buy fancy things to feel important. A door opened across the hall, my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, peering out to see what the commotion was about. When she saw Thomas screaming at my door, she quickly retreated back inside. I heard her lock engage. Thomas, you're disturbing my neighbors, I said through the intercom. Please leave, before I have to call the police. Call them, he challenged. I'll tell them how you're financially abusing your family. How you set us up to fail. Rebecca tried again, her voice saccharine. Edwin, honey, we're just upset right now. You know how Thomas gets when he's stressed. Just open the door so we can talk this through. I'm sure we can come to some arrangement. Any arrangement would need to start with an apology, an acknowledgement of why what happened at the restaurant was wrong, I replied. Are you prepared to offer that? There was a pause. Then Rebecca's voice hardened. You want us to apologize because you can't take a joke, because you're so materialistic that a wet bag ruins your whole birthday. Grow up, Edwin. And there it was. They hadn't come to make amends or find a solution. They'd come to manipulate me into fixing their problem while accepting no responsibility for their actions. I think we're done here, I said. Please leave my property now. This isn't over, Thomas shouted, kicking my door again. Either you fix this car situation or you're not family anymore. Is that what you want? To lose your only brother over a stupid car? I took a deep breath, then spoke clearly into the intercom. Family doesn't humiliate each other and then laugh about it. Family doesn't teach children to be cruel. Family doesn't show up at someone's home and threaten them. If that's your definition of family, then maybe we're better off without that connection. There was a shocked silence from the other side of the door. I don't think Thomas expected me to choose distance over capitulation. He'd always been able to use the family card to get what he wanted from me. You'll regret this, Rebecca finally said. When you're old and alone with no one who cares about you, you'll wish you hadn't thrown away your family over money. I'm not the one who made this about money, I replied. You are. Now please leave before I call the police. I watched through the security camera as they finally turned and walked away. Thomas still fuming and Rebecca whispering furiously in his ear. They got into a car I didn't recognize, probably borrowed from a friend, and drove off. As their car disappeared down the street, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Sadness for what our relationship had become, relief that I'd stood my ground, and a quiet certainty that while this confrontation was over, the family drama was just beginning. The aftermath of the car repossession rippled through our extended family, like a stone thrown into a still pond. By the next day, my phone was lighting up with calls and messages from relatives I rarely heard from. Cousin Ryan. Dude, what's this? I hear about you getting Thomas's car repossessed. That's cold. Aunt Patricia Edwin. I'm very disappointed to hear how you've treated your brother. Family should support each other. Uncle Robert need to talk to you about this situation with Thomas. Call me. Most had clearly heard only Thomas's version of events. I considered ignoring them all, but I knew that would only make me look guilty in their eyes. Instead, I crafted a simple, factual response that I sent to anyone who reached out. I understand Thomas has been sharing his perspective on recent events. There's more to the story. I've been covering his car payments for 6 months without reimbursement. At my birthday dinner, his son threw my bag into a pool, damaging my possessions, while Thomas and Rebecca laughed. I'm taking some space from the relationship right now and would appreciate your understanding. For the few family members who seemed genuinely concerned rather than accusatory, I offered to share the restaurant security footage, which I had indeed requested and received, and bank statements showing the payments I'd been making on Thomas's behalf. The reactions were mixed. Some relatives immediately took Thomas's side regardless of evidence, while others were horrified when they saw the video of Tyler's action and Thomas and Rebecca's reaction. Aunt Martha, who had been at the dinner and seen the incident firsthand, became my strongest ally. She called me the day after I sent her the security footage. "Edwin, I want to apologize," she said when I answered. "I was there and I didn't stand up for you at the restaurant. I was so shocked by what happened, and then everything moved so quickly with you leaving." "It's okay, Aunt Martha. It wasn't your responsibility to intervene." "But it was," she insisted. "I raised you boys after your mother passed. I should have done a better job teaching Thomas about respect and consequences." We talked for nearly an hour. Martha shared that she'd always tried to give Thomas extra leeway because he struggled more than I did, but she was starting to see how that approach had backfired. She also revealed that Thomas had been bad-mouthing me to the family for years, painting himself as the struggling underdog and me as the privileged golden child who refused to help. "I should have seen through it," Martha said. "You've always been generous with your time and resources. Thomas takes and takes without giving back." Her validation meant more to me than I expected. For years, I'd questioned whether I was being too hard on Thomas, whether I should be more understanding of his struggles. Hearing Martha acknowledge the pattern helped me feel more secure in my decision to establish boundaries. Over the next few weeks, I began the process of healing. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Cameron, who specialized in family trauma. In our sessions, we explored not just the recent incident, but the long history of my relationship with Thomas. "What you're describing sounds like a classic golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic," Dr. Cameron explained during our second session. "Your brother was cast as the golden child who could do no wrong, while you were expected to be self-sufficient and not cause problems. But our parents divorced when we were young," I pointed out, "and our mom worked all the time just to keep us afloat. There wasn't really anyone around to create that dynamic." "These roles can develop even without direct parental enforcement," he replied. "Sometimes they emerge naturally, based on personality differences, and then become reinforced by extended family and social interactions. What's important is that you recognize it's not your fault, and not your responsibility to maintain that unhealthy system." Those words, "not your responsibility," became a mantra for me in the weeks that followed. Not my responsibility to fix Thomas's financial mistakes. Not my responsibility to tolerate disrespect in the name of family harmony. Not my responsibility to set myself on fire to keep others warm. I also focused on building stronger connections outside of my family. I invited coworkers for dinner, joined a hiking group, and reconnected with old friends I'd neglected while dealing with Thomas's dramas. Slowly, I built a support network of people who valued me without condition or comparison. 3 weeks after the car repossession, I ran into Rebecca at the local grocery store. I spotted her first and considered avoiding the encounter. But before I could change direction, she saw me. To my surprise, she didn't immediately launch into accusations or insults. Instead, she looked almost embarrassed. "Edwin," she said with a nod, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "Rebecca," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "How are you?" She shrugged, glancing around as if checking whether anyone could overhear us. "Been better, been worse." I noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "And Thomas. The kids." "Thomas is taking the bus to work," she said, a hint of resentment in her voice. "His boss isn't happy about him being late all the time. Tyler's been acting out at school. The usual." There was an awkward pause. I felt no obligation to fill it with offers of help or expressions of sympathy. Finally, Rebecca spoke again, her voice lower. "You know, maybe things got a bit out of hand at your birthday dinner. Tyler shouldn't have done that with your bag." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest thing to acknowledgement I'd heard from either of them. "No, he shouldn't have," I agreed. Rebecca glanced at me, then back at her shopping cart. "Thomas is having a hard time adjusting to the new situation. He's not handling it well." I could read between the lines. The financial stress was causing tension in their marriage. Thomas's true colors were showing at home, not just directed at me. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish suffering on them. I just wanted healthy boundaries. Your Aunt Martha invited us to Sunday dinner next week, Rebecca said suddenly. She said you might be there too. It was Martha's way of trying to facilitate a controlled reunion. I'd already discussed it with her and agreed to attend, knowing she would act as a buffer. I'll be there, I confirmed. Rebecca nodded. Thomas doesn't know yet. I'm still deciding whether to tell him beforehand or just bring him without warning. That surprised me. It suggested that Rebecca at least recognized the need for some kind of reconciliation, even if Thomas wasn't there yet. That's your call, I said. But I think it would be better if he's prepared. She shrugged again. Maybe. Anyway, I should finish shopping. Tyler has a soccer game later. As she pushed her cart away, I noticed something I hadn't seen at first. She was buying store-brand items, clipping coupons, making economical choices. The financial reality of living within their actual means was setting in. I finished my shopping and headed home thinking about the upcoming dinner at Martha's. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face Thomas again, but I knew avoiding him forever wasn't the solution either. We shared family history and a childhood. Even if our relationship was fundamentally changed, we would still orbit each other's lives. That night, I called Martha to confirm I'd attend the dinner. I ran into Rebecca today, I told her. She mentioned you invited them. I hope that's okay, Martha said. I thought having neutral ground might help start the healing process. It's okay, I assured her. Just don't expect miracles. Thomas still hasn't acknowledged any wrongdoing. One step at a time, Martha replied. One step at a time. The day of Aunt Martha's dinner arrived, with a mix of sunshine and clouds, a fitting metaphor for my emotional state. I brought a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers, determined to be polite regardless of how Thomas behaved. Martha welcomed me with a warm hug. They're not here yet, she whispered in my ear. Rebecca texted that they're running late. I helped Martha in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, and setting the table like we'd done countless Sunday dinners before. There was comfort in the familiar routine in Martha's stories about her garden and her book club. For a little while, I could almost forget the tension waiting just around the corner. The doorbell rang at 10 minutes past 4. Martha squeezed my arm before going to answer it. I stayed in the kitchen, taking deep breaths and reminding myself of what Dr. Cameron had said in our last session. You can't control Thomas's reaction, only your own. Stay grounded in your truth. I heard them enter Rebecca's voice, greeting Martha Tyler's excited chatter about something he'd seen on the way over, and then Thomas's deeper tones subdued compared to his usual boisterousness. Martha led them into the living room, giving me a few more minutes of preparation before calling everyone to dinner. When I finally entered the dining room carrying a bowl of mashed potatoes, the atmosphere instantly changed. Thomas stiffened his eyes, narrowing slightly before dropping to his plate. Rebecca offered a tight smile. Tyler looked confused, probably picking up on the adult tension but not understanding its source. Edwin made the mashed potatoes, Martha announced cheerfully, as if this were any normal family dinner. They're delicious, as always. Thank you for cooking, Edwin, Rebecca said, her tone carefully neutral. Thomas said nothing, pushing food around his plate without making eye contact. The first 20 minutes of dinner were excruciating. Martha carried most of the conversation, asking Tyler about school, and Rebecca about her part-time job at the local library. Thomas ate in silence, responding to direct questions with minimal words. I focused on being polite, but not overly friendly, answering Martha's questions about work and my hiking group without directing any comments specifically to Thomas. After the main course, Martha asked Tyler to help her bring dessert from the kitchen, a transparent attempt to give the adults some time to talk. Rebecca excused herself to use the bathroom, leaving Thomas and me alone at the table. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat. So he said, still not looking directly at me. "How've you been?" "I've been okay," I replied. "You?" He shrugged, a gesture so reminiscent of our childhood that it almost made me smile. "Been better." More silence. I decided to wait him out. If any reconciliation was going to happen, it needed to come from him first. "Look," Thomas finally said, his voice low. The car thing. It was a wake-up call. I'm not saying you were right to do it, but I get why you did. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, a start. I never wanted to hurt you, Thomas. I just couldn't keep enabling behaviors that were harmful to both of us. He nodded slowly. Rebecca and I have been talking about money and stuff. We're trying to, be more responsible. That's good to hear. Thomas glanced toward the kitchen, making sure Tyler was still out of earshot. I shouldn't have said that stuff to Tyler about you. The not deserving nice things comment. That was wrong of me. The admission seemed to physically pain him, but he got it out. It wasn't the effusive apology I might have once hoped for, but knowing Thomas, it represented significant growth. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It hurt to hear those words, especially from Tyler. Yeah, well, kids repeat everything Thomas said with a grimace. We've been working with him on that. On respecting other people's stuff, too. Before I could respond, Martha and Tyler returned with apple pie and ice cream. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but something had changed. The tension hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had eased enough that we could all breathe a little easier. As the evening wound down, Thomas pulled me aside while the others were clearing dessert plates. I got a used car, he said. Nothing fancy. Affordable payments. I'm making them on time. That's great, Thomas. I'm glad to hear it. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous gesture from childhood. I don't expect us to go back to how things were before, but maybe we could. I don't know. Not be complete strangers. I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. It might take time, though. Yeah, I get that. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I am sorry about your bag. And the stuff inside. Rebecca told me about the photo of Mom. That shouldn't have happened. It was the closest thing to a real apology I'd heard from him. Thank you for saying that. We rejoined the others, and soon it was time to leave. As we said our goodbyes at the door, Tyler tugged at my sleeve. Uncle Edwin, he said, looking up at me with serious eyes. I'm sorry I threw your bag in the water. Dad says I need to apologize when I do something wrong. I knelt down to his level. Thank you for apologizing, Tyler. That means a lot to me. Are you still mad at me? I shook my head. No, I'm not mad. I was sad because some important things got ruined. But I'm not mad at you. Tyler nodded, processing this. Dad says I have to save my allowance to help pay for a new bag for you. I glanced up at Thomas, who gave a small nod. That's very responsible of you, I told Tyler. But you know what would mean even more to me? If you promise to be careful with other people's things in the future. I promise, Tyler said solemnly. As they drove away, Martha put her arm around my shoulders. You did good, Edwin. All of you did. 6 months passed. Thomas and I established a new kind of relationship, more distant than before, but also healthier. We met occasionally for coffee, or a quick lunch, keeping conversations light and steering clear of financial topics. He had kept his word about teaching Tyler better behavior, and the boy was noticeably more respectful during our infrequent interactions. I continued building my life independent of family drama. My hiking group had become close friends. I dated occasionally, though nothing serious yet. Work was challenging and fulfilling. The therapist had helped me recognize and dismantle unhealthy patterns in how I related to others, especially my tendency to overextend myself to avoid conflict. Most importantly, I'd learned valuable lessons that I would carry forward. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. You can't help someone who isn't willing to help themselves. Real family supports your growth rather than resenting it. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Not all relationships can or should be saved, but many can be transformed into something different, but still valuable. Looking back at that birthday dinner, I can now see it as a painful but necessary turning point. Sometimes it takes a dramatic moment, a bag thrown into a pool, a car towed from a driveway, to break patterns that have persisted for decades. I still carry a photo of Mom with me, though it's a different one now. The water-damaged original couldn't be restored, but Martha found another beautiful picture that I had laminated and keep safe. It reminds me not just of Mom, but of the importance of protecting what matters while having the courage to let go of what doesn't. If you're dealing with your own family drama or toxic relationships, remember that setting boundaries isn't about punishing others, it's about taking care of yourself. You deserve respect, honesty, and kindness from the people in your life. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you care about? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves. Thanks for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest peace.